My name is Hannah Carpenter, and my mother shoved a champagne tray into my hands 10 minutes before the engagement photos and said quietly through her teeth, "Try not to stand too close to Olivia tonight. People are here to celebrate success." That sentence shouldn't have hurt me anymore. Not after 28 years. Not after birthdays where Olivia opened diamond bracelets while I got grocery store candles. Not after college rejection letters I never told anyone about, because I already knew what my mother would say. Maybe you just weren't meant for bigger things, Hannah. Welcome back to Revenge Story HQ, the home of shocking family betrayals, emotional revenge, hidden secrets, and stories that prove the truth always comes out eventually. If you love intense drama, manipulative villains, heartbreaking betrayals, and satisfying revenge stories that keep you hooked until the very end, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back to the night my own brother looked me in the eye while I was being handcuffed and chose my stepmother over me. What none of us realized then was that the woman who destroyed our family had been hiding a terrifying secret from the very beginning. But somehow standing inside that glittering country club outside Columbus, Ohio, holding a tray like hired staff at my own sister's engagement party, it hurt worse than ever. The ballroom looked like something from a wedding magazine. Crystal chandeliers, white roses hanging from gold arches, a string quartet near the staircase. Olivia stood in the center of all of it wearing a silk champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than my rent. Everyone orbited around her, laughing, touching her arm, praising her. My younger sister had always known how to perform perfection, and tonight, she was glowing under it. Olivia's branding proposal is genius. Her investors are already interested. She built this entire business herself? Every compliment felt like someone slowly pressing a thumb into a bruise. Because I built that proposal, not her. 3 months earlier, Olivia had appeared at my apartment crying about stress. She told me she just needed help organizing her ideas. That help turned into 72 hours of unpaid work. I designed the presentation, the market positioning, the visuals, the pitch deck, the campaign strategy. I even wrote her speaking notes. And now she stood beneath a chandelier accepting praise for my brain while I carried champagne glasses like background decoration. The worst part? Nobody questioned it. Because Olivia Carpenter looked like success. And I looked like someone people accidentally forgot to invite. "Smile more," my mother hissed as she passed beside me. "You always look bitter in photos." Then she looked at my black dress. Not designer. Not glamorous. Just simple. Her mouth tightened immediately. "Honestly, Hannah, if you're going to embarrass this family, stay out of the professional photos." A few nearby guests heard her. One woman looked away awkwardly. Another pretended not to. My face burned. I nodded like I always did. That's what happens when humiliation becomes routine. You stop reacting to survive it. Across the ballroom, Olivia lifted a champagne glass. "My family sacrificed so much for me," she told the crowd emotionally. I nearly laughed. Sacrificed. That word tasted poisonous in my mouth. Olivia got private school, Europe trips, a new car at 16, designer internships through family connections. I got hand-me-down sweaters and lectures about being realistic. But the room adored her. And Olivia loved being adored. Then something strange happened. A man near the back of the ballroom started staring at me. Not casually. Carefully. Like he recognized something. He was older. Maybe early 60s. Expensive charcoal suit. Silver hair. Sharp posture. Power radiated off him in that quiet way wealthy men carry themselves when they're used to rooms making space for them. I recognized him immediately.
Victor Hale,
Even I knew that name. Real estate developer.
multimilionaire.
Owned half the commercial projects around central Ohio. Why was he at Olivia's engagement party? More importantly, why was he looking at me like that? Our eyes met briefly. Something shifted in his expression.
Shock.
Not dramatic shock. Not movie-style surprise. Something smaller. Sharper. Recognition. Then my mother suddenly appeared beside him. And for the first time all night, I saw panic cross her face. Real panic. Victor said something to her quietly. My mother's entire body stiffened. Olivia noticed too. She stopped smiling for half a second. That half second changed everything, because suddenly I realized something I had never once considered before. My mother and Olivia weren't afraid of me failing. They were afraid of something else. Something connected to him. The engagement speeches started. People gathered near the stage. I stayed near the back carrying empty glasses toward the catering station when I heard applause erupt. Olivia stepped onto the platform beside her fiancé Daniel. Beautiful.
Polished. Perfect.
Then the projector behind her lit up. And my stomach dropped. My designs filled the screen. My typography. My layouts. My campaign concepts. Even the tagline I'd written at 3 in the morning after Olivia said she was too overwhelmed to think. The crowd erupted again. Daniel wrapped an arm around her proudly. "You're incredible," he whispered into the microphone. Olivia smiled modestly. "I just worked really hard." Something inside me cracked quietly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to realize I couldn't survive another year like this. I turned away before anyone saw my face. That's when Victor Hale appeared beside me. Close enough for me to smell expensive cologne and rain from outside. He looked at me for several seconds without speaking. Then his eyes moved to the silver necklace around my throat. My father's old camera charm. The only thing I had left from him. Victor inhaled sharply. And then he said the sentence that stopped my entire world cold. "You have your father's eyes." My pulse stumbled. Nobody talked about my father anymore. Nobody. Not after he died. Especially not my mother. I stared at Victor. "How did you know my father?" But Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward my mother across the ballroom. And the expression on his face wasn't nostalgia. It was regret. Deep regret. Then he looked back at me and said quietly, "Because I should have come back for you years ago." And before I could respond, my mother screamed my name from across the room. Not angry. Terrified. That was the moment I realized something was deeply wrong in my family. But I still didn't know the worst part. Not yet. Because 3 nights later, Victor Hale called me directly. And what he told me made my entire childhood stop making sense. The first time I realized my mother loved Olivia differently, I was 8 years old. Christmas morning. Olivia got a white horse-shaped vanity set with glowing lights around the mirror. I got socks. Not metaphorical socks. Actual socks. 3 pairs. My mother smiled like this was perfectly reasonable. "Olivia takes better care of expensive things," she said. That became the explanation for everything. Why Olivia got piano lessons. Why Olivia got private school tuition. Why Olivia got vacations. Why Olivia always got chosen. And I didn't. From the outside, we looked like a perfect suburban family in Columbus. Church on Sundays. Matching Christmas cards. Backyard cookouts. Smiling family photos over the fireplace. But inside the house, there were invisible rules. Olivia mattered more. Olivia's moods controlled the atmosphere. Olivia's dreams became family goals. Mine became inconveniences. My father was the only person who disrupted that pattern. Sometimes. Not enough to stop it, but enough for me to survive it. He was a carpenter before illness forced him to stop working full-time. His hands always smelled like cedar wood and motor oil. And whenever things got bad inside the house, I found him in the garage. That garage became my safe place. He taught me how to hold a camera there. An old silver film camera he carried everywhere. "Pictures tell the truth people try to hide," he used to say. I didn't understand that sentence then. I do now. At 12, I started helping Olivia with school projects. At 14, I was editing her essays. At 16, I was secretly designing her social media pages while she took credit publicly. My mother encouraged it constantly. "Your sister shines brighter when you support her." Imagine hearing that enough times as a child. Eventually you stop asking whether you shine at all. The strange part was this. Olivia wasn't openly cruel back then. Not always. That's what made her dangerous. She knew exactly when to hug me, when to compliment me, when to make me feel included, just enough to keep me loyal. Then she'd quietly take something. Credit, attention, opportunity, and somehow I'd leave feeling guilty for noticing. After my father died, everything changed completely. The warmth disappeared from the house overnight. My mother became colder, sharper, almost resentful toward me specifically. Olivia noticed immediately, and she adapted faster than I did. Within months, she learned how to weaponize my mother's approval. If Olivia wanted something, she positioned herself beside my mother emotionally. If I wanted something, suddenly there was financial stress. When I got accepted into an out-of-state design program, my mother cried at the kitchen table. Not proud tears, manipulative tears. How could you leave me alone after everything I sacrificed? I stayed. Olivia left for a luxury university 6 months later. Nobody cried then. By 23, I was basically invisible inside my own family, unless someone needed something designed. Olivia's influencer branding, her fiancé's startup deck, her engagement website. I built entire pieces of her life, quietly, while she stood in front of cameras pretending brilliance came naturally to her. And somehow, I believed I deserved that role. That's the terrifying thing about emotional neglect. It doesn't just hurt you, it trains you. A week after the engagement party, I found myself sitting alone in my apartment staring at my father's silver camera. The apartment was tiny, bad lighting, peeling paint near the kitchen ceiling. Olivia's engagement flowers probably cost more than everything inside it. I turned the camera over slowly in my hands. That's when I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. I was 13. Late at night, I came downstairs for water and heard my mother whispering on the phone. Her voice sounded tense.
Panicked.
I remember standing near the staircase listening. Then I heard her say something strange. She can never know the truth. I froze. A second later, Olivia answered from the other side of the kitchen. What if Dad tells her? My mother replied instantly. He won't. At 13, I assumed they were talking about money problems, or illness, or something adult and boring. But sitting in my apartment years later, Victor Hale's face suddenly flashed through my mind. You have your father's eyes. Because I should have come back for you years ago. A cold feeling crawled slowly up my spine. For the first time in my life, I wondered if my family had been hiding something about me. And 2 days later, Victor Hale confirmed it. Victor Hale called me at 9:14 p.m. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. Miss Carpenter?
His voice was calm.
Controlled. Careful. The kind of careful that made me instantly nervous. Yes. A pause. Then, we need to talk privately.
No explicación.
No small talk. Just that. Every instinct told me to hang up. Instead, I asked, how did you know my father? Another pause. Longer this time. Then Victor said quietly, because your father saved my life once. I stopped breathing for a second. What? Not over the phone, he said. And Hannah, your mother, and Olivia cannot know we're meeting. My stomach tightened immediately. That sentence changed the temperature of the entire conversation.
Cannot know.
Not should not.
Cannot.
He asked me to meet him at a small coffee shop outside downtown Columbus the next afternoon. After we hung up, I did something I'd never done before. I searched Victor Hale obsessively online. News articles, business interviews, charity galas, corporate photos. The more I read, the stranger it became. Victor wasn't just wealthy. He was powerful. And somehow, he knew intimate things about my father. About me. I barely slept that night. The next afternoon, rain covered the city in gray fog. Victor was already sitting inside the coffee shop when I arrived. Corner booth. Black coat. Coffee untouched. He stood immediately when he saw me. Not because he was flirting. Not because he was charming. Because he looked genuinely emotional. Like seeing me hurt him somehow. I sat slowly across from him. Victor studied my face for several seconds. Then his eyes landed on my necklace again. The tiny silver camera charm. His throat moved slightly. That was Richard's camera, he said quietly. Nobody had said my father's name out loud in years.
Not in my family.
Not ever. You knew him well? Victor leaned back slowly. Then he reached into a leather folder beside him and pulled out several photographs. He slid the first one toward me. My breath caught instantly. My father. Younger. Laughing. Standing beside Victor at a construction site. The second photo. Victor holding me as a toddler on his shoulders. The third. A backyard barbecue. My father smiling at the camera while my mother looked furious in the background. I stared at the photos in complete silence. Because none of these pictures existed in our house. Not one. Where did you get these? Victor's jaw tightened slightly. Your mother destroyed every copy she had. A cold sensation spread through my chest. What are you talking about? Victor looked at me carefully, like he was deciding how much truth I could survive at once. Then he said quietly, I tried to help you for years, but your mother made sure I couldn't. The room suddenly felt too small, too warm. My heartbeat became loud in my ears. What does that mean? Victor reached into the folder again. This time he pulled out a stack of unopened envelopes. All addressed to me. Different birthdays. Different years. My name written carefully across each one. Hannah Carpenter. My hands started shaking immediately. These were all returned to me, Victor said. I stared at the envelopes. Unopened. Yellowed slightly with age. Some had return to sender stamped across them in red ink. I don't understand. Victor slid one envelope toward me slowly. The handwriting on the front looked familiar somehow. Then realization hit me. My father's handwriting. I looked up sharply. Victor's eyes softened immediately. He wrote those before he died. Something inside my chest collapsed. Because suddenly, nothing about my childhood felt stable anymore. And Victor still hadn't told me the worst part. Not even close. He looked directly at me and said quietly, Your mother told me you hated me. I opened the first envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a birthday card. Pink balloons on the front.
Cheap.
Simple. My father's handwriting filled the inside. To my favorite girl. If you ever feel alone, remember you were loved before you were born. I stopped reading immediately. My vision blurred. Victor looked away respectfully. I swallowed hard and opened another envelope. And another. Every birthday. Every year after my father died. Letters.
Cards. Checks.
Some from Victor. Some from my father written before his death. One envelope was thicker than the others. Victor pushed it toward me carefully. For your college tuition, he said quietly. The front read, For Hannah's future. My chest tightened painfully. I opened it slowly. Inside was a check large enough to completely change my life at 18. I stared at the amount in disbelief. My mother told me constantly we couldn't afford college. That sacrifices had to be made. That Olivia's tuition drained the family. Meanwhile, this existed, waiting for me. My breathing became uneven. She told me you didn't want help, Victor said carefully. Eventually, she stopped answering my calls altogether. I looked up sharply. Why were you helping me? Victor's eyes darkened slightly. Because I owed your father everything. Rain tapped softly against the coffee shop windows. Victor folded his hands together slowly. Your father worked for me before I built Hale Development into what it became. Back then, I was reckless. Arrogant. One bad deal nearly destroyed me.
He paused.
Richard stepped in and saved my company. I stared at him. My father never talked about any of this. He wouldn't, Victor replied quietly. He hated making people feel indebted. Something painful twisted inside my chest. Because that sounded exactly like him. Victor looked at me carefully again. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. Your father worried constantly about what would happen to you after he died. A lump formed in my throat immediately. What do you mean? Victor hesitated. That hesitation terrified me more than anything else. Then finally, he knew your mother treated Olivia differently. I looked down instantly. Humiliation burned hot under my skin. Even dead, my father had noticed. Of course he had. Victor continued carefully. He made me promise to watch over you. I almost laughed at the cruelty of that sentence. Watch over me? Where was everyone while I was drowning inside that house? Victor must have seen the anger flash across my face because he leaned forward immediately. I tried. The intensity in his voice startled me. I sent letters. Money. I tried arranging mentorship opportunities for you after high school. Your mother intercepted everything. I stared at him. Why? Victor looked genuinely exhausted suddenly. Because he knew the answer. And hated it. But before he could speak, my phone buzzed. Olivia. Incoming call. Victor's expression changed instantly. Sharp. Alert. Don't answer, he said quietly. That frightened me more than it should have. Because for the first time in my life, I realized people weren't trying to protect Olivia from me. They were trying to protect something from being exposed. And I still didn't know what it was.
Not yet.
But I was getting closer. Much closer. The first thing I noticed on my first morning at Hale Urban Development was the silence. Not literal silence.
Phone is rang.
Printers hummed. People laughed behind glass conference rooms. But it was the kind of silence that exists when people already know something about you before you arrive. Victor Hale walked me through the office himself. That alone made people stare. Employees straightened in their chairs when he passed. Assistants lowered their voices. Executives suddenly found reasons to stand up. And beside him, I felt painfully out of place in my thrift store blazer and nervous smile. This is Hannah Carpenter, Victor said calmly. She'll be joining the branding department. Joining. Not interviewing. Not assisting. Joining. The word hit me harder than it should have. Because nobody in my family had ever spoken about me like I belonged anywhere important. Victor introduced me to the creative team, gave me a desk near the windows overlooking downtown Columbus, then placed a slim black folder in front of me. Inside were 3 active development campaigns: luxury housing,
Restaurant branding.
a mixed-use commercial district, real work, important work, work Olivia would have killed for. Victor rested one hand on my desk. I looked at your portfolio again last night, he said quietly. You've been underestimated for a very long time. Then he walked away. And for several seconds, I couldn't breathe properly. Because nobody had ever said that to me before. Not once. Not teachers. Not my mother. Not Olivia. Especially not Olivia. For years, Olivia had treated my talent like a useful appliance. Something she could plug in whenever she needed praise. You're so good with visuals. Can you fix this? Can you make this look more professional? Then she'd present my work like magic had created it. And somehow, I always let her. Because when you spend your whole life starving for approval, even scraps feel like love. But something was changing now. I could feel it. And Olivia could feel it too. That became obvious 3 days later. I was preparing mock-ups for a restaurant rebrand when my calendar notification suddenly changed. Meeting moved to 8 a.m., except it was already 8:40. Confused, I rushed upstairs to the conference room. Inside sat 6 executives staring at me, Victor included. The presentation screen displayed my unfinished drafts. My stomach dropped. We started 40 minutes ago, one executive said coldly. I opened my laptop. My calendar. My inbox. The original meeting time had been 9 a.m. Now it showed 8 o'clock. Someone had edited it. I'm sorry, I said carefully. The schedule changed. The executive sighed. Victor didn't speak, but his eyes narrowed slightly. That terrified me more than if he'd yelled. After the meeting, I returned to my desk feeling sick. Then I checked my deleted email folder. 3 missing client messages. Deleted overnight. My pulse quickened. I restored them manually, all marked as opened from a secondary device. Someone was inside my work accounts. That night, Olivia called me unexpectedly. Her voice sounded too cheerful. How's the new job?
Fine.
You and Victor seem close. There it was. The real reason for the call. I leaned back slowly in my chair. We work together. Silence. Then, casually, he's been helping you a lot, huh? Something about her tone made my stomach tighten. Not curiosity. Calculation. How do you know that? I asked. A pause. Too long. Oh, please, she laughed lightly. People talk.
People.
Or someone inside the company. That thought stayed with me long after the call ended. The next morning, Megan from accounting stopped beside my desk holding coffee. You okay? I think someone's messing with my emails. Her expression changed immediately. Not surprise. Recognition. Check your forwarding settings. I frowned. What? She leaned closer. Just check. So I did. And my blood went cold. Every deleted message, every changed calendar invite, every client update had been automatically forwarded to another email address before disappearing. Olivia.Carpenter, consulting@gmail. I stopped breathing. Olivia, my own sister. She'd been inside my work accounts, watching me,
Sabotaging me.
again. I stared at the screen while my entire body went numb, because suddenly every moment from my childhood made horrible sense. Every failed opportunity, every ruined internship, every mysteriously missing application. What if none of them had been accidents? What if Olivia had been managing my failures for years? And the worst part? I still didn't know how far she was willing to go. But I was about to find out, because 2 days later, Victor handed me a storage key
And said,
"There's something your father wanted you to have." The storage unit smelled like dust, cardboard, and rain-soaked wood. Victor unlocked it slowly. The overhead light flickered on. Rows of sealed boxes stretched along metal shelves. My father's handwriting was everywhere.
Blueprint archive.
Kitchen receipts, old tax files, Hannah's school photos. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. For years after my father died, my mother told me she'd donated most of his belongings. We didn't have room, she'd said. But she lied. Again. Victor stepped aside quietly. "I thought these should belong to you." I walked deeper into the unit like I was entering a graveyard. Every object felt frozen in time. My father's old work boots, his drafting tools, a coffee mug with a chipped handle. Then I saw it. The silver camera. My throat closed instantly. I picked it up carefully. The leather strap was cracked with age, but the metal body still gleamed beneath the dust. My father used to carry that camera everywhere. Birthday parties, school plays, camping trips.
Me.
Always me. Olivia used to complain about it constantly. "Dad takes way more pictures of Hannah." At the time, I thought she was exaggerating. Now, I wasn't so sure. I sat cross-legged on the concrete floor opening old boxes, while Victor remained near the entrance, giving me space. Inside one container were dozens of photographs. My father holding my hand at the zoo. My father teaching me how to use the camera. My father sitting beside my bed in a hospital room when I broke my wrist at 12. And in almost every picture, he was looking at me like I was the center of his entire world. Tears blurred my vision, because nobody had looked at me that way since he died. Then I found the envelope. It was taped beneath the bottom of a drafting box. Yellowed with age. 5 words written across the front in sharp black marker.
Do not show Hannah.
My pulse stopped. Slowly, I opened it. Inside were legal papers, medical records, and a DNA test. At first, my brain couldn't process what I was reading. Probability of paternity, 0%. I stared at the numbers. Again, again, again. My hands started shaking violently.
No.
Victor crossed the room immediately. "Hannah, this is fake."
But my voice sounded weak, distant,
Broken. The date on the paperwork was 21 years old. My father knew. My father had known my entire life. I couldn't breathe correctly. Suddenly, every memory twisted sideways inside my head. My mother's coldness. Olivia's resentment. The way relatives sometimes looked at me strangely, like there was something they knew that I didn't. I looked up at Victor. He wasn't my father? Victor's expression shattered me completely. "Biologically," he said softly.
No.
The room tilted. I pressed one hand against the concrete floor to steady myself. No, he loved me. Victor crouched beside me immediately. "Hannah, listen to me carefully." His voice was firm now. "That man loved you more than anything I have ever witnessed in my life." Tears rolled down my face before I realized I was crying. "Then why hide this?" Victor looked away briefly. "Because your mother begged him to." The words hit like broken glass. I stared at the papers again. And suddenly, everything made horrible sense. Why Olivia was always treated like the real daughter. Why my mother looked at me differently. Why my father always seemed caught between protecting me and apologizing for something he never caused. I wiped my face shakily. Who's my biological father? Victor hesitated, which terrified me instantly.
What?
He exhaled slowly.
He's alive.
My entire body went still. And Olivia already knows. Sunday dinners at my mother's house always smelled like rosemary and control. Nothing ever changed there. Same dining table. Same polished silverware. Same fake smiles. Like the entire house existed to preserve a version of our family that had never actually been real. I arrived carrying a leather folder. Inside, the letters, the DNA test, the photographs, everything. Olivia opened the front door, and the second she saw the envelope in my hand, her face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. A flicker.
Panic.
Then gone. Hannah, she said carefully. You came. I smiled.
Yeah.
My mother appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands nervously. For some reason, she looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Tension in her jaw. Almost like Olivia had warned her something was coming. Dinner began awkwardly. My uncle talked about football. My aunt discussed school funding. Olivia's fiancé, Daniel, kept checking his phone. And my mother watched me constantly, waiting. Finally, I placed the folder on the table. Every conversation stopped. I met Victor Hale, I said. Olivia froze. Not emotionally. Physically. Like her body forgot how to move. My mother's fork slipped from her fingers onto the plate. The sound echoed through the room. Hannah, she said quietly. Too quietly. I opened the folder and laid the return tuition checks onto the table. Then the birthday cards. Then the photographs. Nobody spoke. You told me Victor abandoned us, I said to my mother. Silence. You told me he never cared. My mother looked pale now. Hannah, this isn't the place. You returned every letter he sent. Olivia stood abruptly. Can we not do this right now? I turned toward her slowly. Why are you nervous? I'm not nervous. Then sit down. Her jaw tightened instantly. And for the first time in my life, Olivia actually looked afraid of me.
I pulled out the DNA test
And placed it directly in front of my mother. My aunt gasped softly. Daniel frowned in confusion. What is that? He asked. Nobody answered him. I looked directly at my mother. Tell them. Tears filled her eyes immediately.
Real tears this time.
Hannah, tell them. My voice cracked hard enough to silence the room. For 26 years, I had swallowed every humiliation quietly. Every insult. Every comparison. Every stolen piece of myself. Not anymore. Olivia suddenly stepped forward. This is ridiculous. I looked at her and saw pure panic behind her perfect expression. You knew, I said quietly. No, I didn't. You knew. Hannah. You knew, and you still let Mom treat me like garbage my entire life. Stop being dramatic. The words snapped something inside me. I stood up, so fast my chair hit the floor. Dramatic. Everyone jumped. You stole my work. You sabotaged my career. You spent years making me feel worthless because you were terrified someone would finally see who I actually was. Olivia's face twisted instantly. And then, she screamed. She was supposed to stay quiet. The room went dead silent. My aunt covered her mouth. Daniel slowly looked at Olivia like he didn't recognize her anymore. And my mother started crying harder. Not because she felt guilty. Because the secret was finally dying. I stared directly at her, my voice barely above a whisper. Who is my real father? And the look on her face told me immediately. The answer was worse than I imagined. My mother sat alone in the kitchen after everyone left. The untouched dessert still sat on the counter. Melted whipped cream. Half-cut pie. Wine glasses nobody finished. The aftermath of a family explosion. I stood near the doorway while rain hit the windows softly outside. For the first time in my life, my mother looked small. Not powerful. Not intimidating. Just tired. She didn't look at me when she spoke. I had an affair. The words landed flatly, like she'd rehearsed them for years. I crossed my arms tightly over my chest. With who? Silence. Then, a man your father worked with briefly. I waited. She still wouldn't look at me. When I got pregnant, I panicked. Your father knew the timing didn't make sense. Tears slid down her face. But he stayed anyway. That destroyed me more than the DNA test did. Because suddenly I understood the weight my father carried. Every day, every year, choosing me, over and over again. Then why hate me? I whispered. That finally made her cry harder. Because she knew. She knew exactly what she'd done. You looked like him, she whispered. The room went still. Every time I looked at you, I saw my mistake. I physically recoiled like she'd slapped me. Not because I didn't suspect it, because hearing it out loud changed something permanently. My entire childhood suddenly rearranged itself in my mind. The cold birthdays, the comparisons, the favoritism, the neglect. It was never about who I was. It was about what I represented. My mother wiped her face shakily. Olivia figured it out when she was 16. I looked up sharply. She overheard an argument between me and your father. Of course she did. And instead of protecting me, Olivia weaponized it. She realized I felt guilty around you, my mother admitted quietly. And she learned how to use that guilt to get what she wanted. Everything clicked into place. The manipulation, the favoritism, the emotional hierarchy inside our family. Olivia didn't just benefit from the imbalance. She managed it, controlled it, fed it. She used me against you, my mother whispered.
No.
Not just her. You let her.
I wanted to say it.
But honestly, she already knew. Then my mother said something that made my stomach turn cold. There's something else.
He stared at her carefully.
What? She hesitated too long. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. My mother looked directly at me for the first time all night, and quietly said, Olivia has been lying about more than just you. Olivia's life didn't collapse all at once. That would have been too easy. Instead, it cracked slowly.
Publicly.
Like glass splintering under pressure. And the first fracture came from something she never expected. People finally comparing her work to mine. Victor assigned me to redesign branding concepts for a luxury hotel project 2 weeks after the family dinner disaster. Big project. Big clients. High visibility. I worked 18-hour days building presentation decks, typography systems, logo variations, campaign mock-ups. For the first time in my life, people saw my work before they saw Olivia's name attached to it. And they noticed. 3 days after the presentation, a senior marketing consultant stopped beside my desk. You did the hotel pitch? Yeah. She frowned slightly. That's weird. My stomach tightened. What? I worked with Olivia last year. Your styles are almost identical. Almost. I nearly laughed. Because that was the problem with stealing someone's creative identity for years. Eventually people notice where the originality actually comes from. Then another employee approached me at lunch. Then another. Then another. By Friday, whispers were moving through the building like electricity. She copied Hannah. Wait, Hannah made those campaigns? Oh my God, Olivia's engagement brand looks exactly the same. Every conversation chipped away at Olivia's perfect image. And Olivia felt it happening. I knew because she started calling me constantly. At first I ignored her. Then the voicemail started. Hannah, this has gone far enough. You're humiliating the family. You're twisting things. Twisting. That word again. Manipulators love that word. Because it lets them pretend reality only exists when they control the narrative. But the narrative was slipping now. Fast. Then came the social media posts. Old coworkers from Olivia's freelance collaborations began commenting anonymously online. She reused old client concepts. She claimed group work as solo work. She lied about designing projects. People started pulling archived portfolios, comparing timestamps, metadata, design drafts. And suddenly the internet started doing what narcissists fear most. Checking receipts. One night Megan sent me a screenshot from a Reddit thread discussing Olivia's self-made entrepreneur image. The comments were brutal. She sounds fake. No way she made all this herself. Something about her story feels rehearsed. Rehearsed.
Exactly.
Because Olivia had spent years performing authenticity instead of living it. And performances eventually crack under pressure. But the worst part came 3 days later. An anonymous package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside, bank statements, tax records, credit documents, and my blood went cold instantly. Because my name was on all of them, not Olivia's.
Mine.
I sat on my kitchen floor flipping through pages while my hands shook violently. Multiple credit lines, business accounts, tax filings, all connected to identities I'd never opened. Some dating back 4 years. One account had over $70,000 moved through it. Using my social security number, my stomach twisted so hard I thought I might throw up. This wasn't sabotage anymore. This was criminal. And suddenly I understood something terrifying. Olivia hadn't just stolen my story. She'd stolen my identity. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered carefully. A woman's calm voice said, "My name is Elaine Mercer."
Pause.
"Victor Hale asked me to call you immediately." Elaine Mercer's office overlooked downtown Columbus from the 22nd floor. Everything about her felt controlled. Sharp black suit, silver watch, perfect posture. The kind of woman who could destroy someone legally without ever raising her voice. She reviewed the documents silently while I sat across from her trying not to panic. Finally, she removed her glasses. "Hannah," she said carefully, "this goes far deeper than family drama." My chest tightened. "How bad is it?" Elaine slid several papers toward me. "These accounts were opened using your identity." I stared at the signatures.
Mine.
Except not mine. Forged. Years of forged signatures. Tax documents filed under my name. Credit cards. Business expense accounts. My breathing became shallow. "She used me?" Elaine nodded once. "And based on these timelines, your mother likely knew." That hurt worse than the fraud itself. Because somewhere deep down, some pathetic part of me still wanted to believe my mother had limits. Apparently, she didn't. Elaine continued calmly. "Your sister created a financial structure that protected her public identity while placing legal risk onto you." I looked up slowly. "So, if this got exposed, you could have faced audits, lawsuits, potentially criminal scrutiny." I physically went cold. Olivia hadn't just wanted me small. She wanted me disposable. A fallback identity. A shield. And suddenly I remembered something strange from 3 years earlier. A credit card rejection letter. At the time, I thought it was because my freelance income was inconsistent. Now I understood. My credit was already being used. By Olivia. For years. I pressed one hand against my forehead, trying to stay calm. How could she do this? Elaine's expression didn't change. People who build their lives around image eventually start treating other people as infrastructure. Infrastructure. Not family. Not sisterhood. Assets.
Tools.
Sacrifices. Victor entered the office 20 minutes later carrying coffee. The second he saw my face, his expression hardened. "She knows?" Elaine nodded once. Victor sat beside me quietly. And for several seconds nobody spoke. Then he said something that stayed with me forever. "Your father spent his whole life protecting you from this family." My throat tightened instantly. "But he couldn't protect you from what they became after he died." I looked down at the financial records again. Then at Olivia's signatures. The neat handwriting. The confidence. She never thought I'd fight back. Because people like Olivia mistake kindness for weakness. They think silence means surrender. Elaine closed the folder carefully. "There's going to be a public investigation," she said. "And your sister's going to panic." "When?" Victor answered. "At the charity gala next Friday." My stomach dropped. The Hale Foundation Gala was one of the largest business events in Ohio. Executives, investors,
Press.
media, hundreds of people. Olivia's fiancé, Daniel, would be there too. "So what happens now?" I asked quietly. Victor looked directly at me. "Now," he said calmly, "the truth gets very expensive for her." The ballroom glittered like a movie set. Crystal chandeliers, black tuxedos, champagne towers, string quartet music drifting beneath hundreds of conversations. Everything looked beautiful, which made what happened next feel even uglier. I stood near the back of the ballroom wearing a dark navy dress Megan helped me choose. Simple, elegant.
Mine.
For once, I wasn't trying to disappear. Victor stood beside investors near the stage, while Elaine spoke quietly with legal consultants near the entrance. Everything felt tense beneath the glamour, like everyone was waiting for a storm they couldn't yet see. Then Olivia arrived, and the entire room shifted. She walked in wearing a white satin gown with her engagement ring flashing beneath the chandeliers like a weapon. Perfect makeup, perfect posture, perfect performance. Except now I could see the cracks, the desperation beneath the polish. People noticed her immediately, then started whispering immediately after. Olivia ignored it.
Of course she did.
Narcissists don't collapse when the room doubts them. They collapse when the room stops admiring them. She spotted me near the ballroom windows and smiled. That terrified me more than anger would have, because it meant she still thought she could control this. Olivia approached slowly, holding a champagne glass. "Hannah," she said sweetly, "you look nervous." "I'm not." She tilted her head slightly. "You've always been emotional under pressure." There it was. The old programming. The old manipulation. Except this time, it didn't work. I looked at her calmly. "You forged my identity." Her smile flickered, just briefly, then recovered. "You really believe that?" "You know what's funny?" I said quietly. "For years I thought you hated me because Mom treated me differently." Olivia's eyes narrowed slightly. "But now I realize you needed her to." That hit
Hard.
because suddenly Olivia's composure shifted. Not broken yet, but threatened. Then Victor stepped onto the ballroom stage. The microphone feedback silenced the room instantly. "Good evening, everyone." Conversations faded. Champagne glasses lowered. Olivia slowly turned toward the stage. Victor's expression was unreadable. Tonight was originally intended to celebrate integrity, community, and leadership.
Pause.
But unfortunately, recent discoveries require transparency. The ballroom went completely silent. Olivia's face lost color. Elaine walked toward the stage carrying a folder. And suddenly people started understanding. Not details, not facts, but danger. "We have uncovered significant evidence involving identity fraud, financial misconduct, plagiarism, and falsified professional representation connected to former consultant Olivia Carpenter." Gasps erupted across the ballroom. Olivia froze, then immediately laughed. Too loudly. "This is insane." Nobody joined her. Elaine continued. "Evidence includes forged financial documents, fraudulent tax activity, stolen intellectual property, and misuse of another individual's identity." Another individual.
Me.
Daniel slowly turned toward Olivia. "What is she talking about?" Olivia grabbed his arm instantly. "They're lying." But her voice cracked. The real crack this time. Not controlled. Not strategic.
Fear.
Elaine displayed the financial records on the ballroom screens. My name. The forged signatures. The account transfers. Visible to everyone. People started murmuring immediately. Executives exchanged stunned looks. Investors whispered. And Daniel slowly stepped away from Olivia, like he finally saw her clearly. Olivia's breathing became uneven. "No," she whispered. Victor spoke calmly into the microphone. Additionally, several creative projects publicly credited to Olivia Carpenter were verified as the work of Hannah Carpenter. Now the room exploded.
Shock.
Whispers. Phones coming out. Public humiliation. Exactly what Olivia spent her whole life avoiding. And suddenly, she snapped. Everything was supposed to be mine. The scream echoed through the ballroom. People physically jumped. Olivia's face twisted with years of buried rage. She ruined everything. Mascara streaked beneath her eyes now. Her breathing ragged.
Wild.
She always got his attention. She always got sympathy. She always made Mom feel guilty. Silence swallowed the room. Because now everyone could finally see it. Not the perfect businesswoman. Not the self-made success story. The jealousy. The obsession. The hatred. raw and ugly in public. Daniel removed the engagement ring from his pocket slowly and placed it onto a nearby table. Olivia stared at it like she'd been shot. Then Victor spoke one final time. "There's one more document." And Olivia's face completely collapsed, because somehow she already knew what it was. The gala ended in chaos. Reporters, security, crying executives, whispered conversations. But none of that mattered anymore. Because an hour later, I sat alone in Victor's office holding a sealed letter with my father's handwriting across the front. For Hannah. My hand shook so badly I could barely open it. Victor stood near the windows silently while rain streaked across the glass outside. Finally, I unfolded the pages, and my father's voice came alive inside my head instantly. "If you're reading this, it means the truth finally found you." Tears blurred the words immediately. "I always knew you weren't biologically mine. But Hannah, you were my daughter long before blood ever mattered." I covered my mouth, trying not to break apart completely. Victor looked away, quietly giving me privacy. "Your mother believed biology defined love. She was wrong. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." I started crying hard then. Not quiet tears. Real ones. Years of pain leaving my body all at once. Every insecurity. Every rejection. Every moment wondering why I wasn't enough.
Gone.
Because the one person who mattered most had chosen me completely. The letter continued. "I took so many photographs of you because I was terrified one day you'd forget how brightly you existed in this world." I looked toward the silver camera sitting on Victor's desk, and suddenly every photo from childhood meant something different. Not guilt.
Love.
Pure love. Then I reached the final page, and my entire body went still. "There's something, Olivia, and your mother never wanted you to know." Victor exhaled quietly behind me. "I already knew. The property on Blackwood Ridge belongs partially to you. I placed your name on the ownership years ago." My pulse quickened. Blackwood Ridge. An undeveloped stretch of land outside Columbus, worth millions now due to commercial expansion. Olivia and my mother hid it. For years. Because if I knew, I would never need them. The final lines nearly destroyed me completely. "You were never unwanted, Hannah. Not for 1 second. And one day I hope you stop seeing yourself through the eyes of people who never deserved you. Love always. Dad."
Dad.
Not stepfather. Not obligation.
Dad.
I pressed the letter against my chest and cried harder than I had in years. Victor finally spoke softly. "He loved you more than anyone I've ever known." I nodded through tears. Because finally, I believed it too. Then Victor handed me one final thing. A house key. I frowned slightly. "What's this?" "Your childhood home," he said quietly. My stomach tightened. "Your mother moved out yesterday." Silence. "She left something for you there." And suddenly, I knew I had to go back one last time. The house felt smaller, empty. Quieter too. Like all the manipulation had finally left with the people who created it. I walked slowly through the living room, touching furniture I used to clean as a teenager, while Olivia got praised for existing. The family photos were gone from the walls. Except one. A photograph sitting alone beside the fireplace. Me and my father. The silver camera hanging around his neck. I stared at it for a long time, then walked upstairs. My old bedroom door creaked open softly. Same pale blue walls. Same tiny closet. Same cracked mirror above the dresser. But it didn't hurt anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I understood the truth. There had never been something wrong with me. I was simply raised inside someone else's shame. I opened the closet slowly. Inside sat a small cardboard box. My mother's handwriting across the top. For Hannah. Carefully I opened it. Inside were dozens of photographs my father had taken of me over the years. Birthday candles. Art projects. School dances. Messy smiles. At the very bottom sat a folded note. "I'm sorry for all the years I let her hurt you."
No signature.
Just that. And honestly, it wasn't enough. But it was the first honest thing my mother had ever given me. I left the note behind. Some apologies arrived too late to carry forward. 3 months later, I moved into a downtown apartment overlooking the river. Big windows, exposed brick, sunlight everywhere.
Mine.
Completely mine. Victor helped me secure ownership of the Blackwood Ridge property legally. Elaine finalized the fraud investigation. Olivia avoided criminal charges through a financial settlement and civil agreements, but her reputation was destroyed permanently. No company would touch her now. Daniel left her. Most friends disappeared. Her online platforms vanished. And, for the first time in her life, there was nobody left to perform for. As for me, I launched my own design studio 6 months later. Carpenter Creative. Not hidden behind anyone else's name. Not handed down. Not stolen. Built honestly. One evening after work, I restored my father's silver camera at a small photography shop downtown. The owner cleaned the lens carefully before handing it back to me. "Beautiful camera," he said. I smiled softly. "Yeah," I whispered. "It really is." That night, I stood alone in my apartment bathroom holding the camera in front of the mirror. And suddenly I realized something. Olivia's voice was gone. My mother's too.
No comparisons. Nos cham.
No invisible measuring system deciding whether I deserved love. Just me. For the first time, only me. I lifted the camera and took a photograph of my own reflection. Not because I hated what I saw, because I finally wanted to remember her. The real her. The woman who survived all of it. The woman they tried to erase. The woman my father saw clearly from the very beginning. They spent years trying to convince me I was easy to replace. But the truth was, I was the only real thing in that family the entire time.